Welcome to tonight's presentation of Home is a Beautiful Word, a play by Joel Bernbaum, playwright from Saskatoon, and he's here tonight and presented in collaboration with Theatre Wakefield. Many of you are here tonight from Theatre Wakefield or have some historic relationship and represented by President Andrea Rowe. So thank you for those people for coming. First, I want to just acknowledge the sacred ground that we walk on and the sacred heritage that we walk among. We, the Writers' Festival, want to welcome you to this ancient territory and this land that is unceded territory of Algonquin people. And they've, for 200 years, welcomed us as guests here. We want to acknowledge this with respectful thanks, but also a commitment to advocating for action, for truth, and for reconciliation. Secondly, I want to extend greetings from the Theatre Wakefield, our executive director who's here, and a number of contractors and volunteers, and it's our 7th year. I also want to extend greetings from LaFabSurMill, this venue, and the group of people that have conspired and schemed to acquire this building, including the co-op members at LaFabSurMill, which I'm a member, and but also the performing arts community, who used this as a home for quite a few years to play music and present cultural activities, and it was their momentum that enabled the LaFab Co-op to eventually buy this building and lead the development of this as perhaps the newest and most audacious cultural center in Western Quebec. That's our aspiration anyway. You can applaud if you want for that. Yeah. Thank you. A word of thanks to the various members of the group, the team, the Theatre Wakefield team, as I say, in our 7th year. And a lot of these people have been with us for a long time. What did I say, Theatre Wakefield? Oh my goodness. There we go, you see. They've been with us longer. They still inhabit our language. The Writers' Fest team. So Helen Giroux, our executive director, Chris Corcoran, website and management reality checker, Al Connors, live streaming, Greg Brown, sound, John Schmidt, digital marketing, Lisa Cowan, communications, Elise Marlane, graphic design, Erica Basque, ticketing, Francesca Hines, photography, Shelley Crabtree, volunteers, and all the volunteers that she has mobilized. And also I want to thank Pam Connolly, who's with the aforementioned group that seeded this project through Mill Road Community Space and others. So thanks, Pam. Yeah, Pam Connolly. Yeah, right. Yeah. She goes home on occasion. It's my job, really, to introduce Leah Cogan, who's the host for the evening. And she said, when I asked her what I should say, given that we printed this very long biography of her on the website, she said, I'd be happy if you just introduced me as an actor, musician, performance coach, current vice chair of PAL Ottawa, the senior artists housing group in Ottawa that's just acquired a building, and the creative partner with the Alliance to End Homelessness in Ottawa. I want to just pay a special tribute to Leah because she's kind of led the formation of this group, maybe not all, but with the patience and the consciousness in some ways. This event that we have here, this Home is a Beautiful Word, is kind of a milestone for Theatre Wakefield, for Writers' Fest, there we go again. It's a milestone for Theatre Wakefield again as well. I always have that excuse. In 2020, we had a visioning process where we looked down the road to becoming a more socially justice-oriented group, both as an arts group and a group of thinkers around how we would use art to speak to current concerns. We were quite theoretical and naive at the outset. We had this aspiration, but we didn't really know how to go about it. We didn't know what issues would rise to the top of programming, which is how you look at things from a cultural point of view, i.e. what you'll get money for. And we didn't know who our partners would be. But with faith and some good intentions of everybody around and some really honest conversations and some good scheming, we got to this event, which you're going to see tonight, a profoundly moving verbatim theater piece with a lot of really good thought about what it is to be poor and what we as privileged people, how we see poverty. We've come to a place where now many of us can speak much better than ever before. We can be true to our principles, and we can walk the talk that we're aspiring to walk. So I want to thank Leah, and I want to thank Joel Bernbaum, the playwright. I want to thank Andrea Rowe, Theatre Wakefield co-chair. I want to thank Kaite Burkholder Harris, who's part of this team. She's on the panel as well, who's the executive director of the Alliance to End Homelessness of Ottawa. Finally, I want to thank Dumont, poet laureate of Ottawa, who's going to read a new poem about homelessness tonight. I want to thank these 5 people for inspiring me personally and working to help us create something that we believe speaks to the issue in a really sensitive way. You want to receive the white... Yes, right. There we go. This is an important ritual that we now...
Performance art right here.
Madame?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bonne chance.
Merci. Thank you. Oh, welcome. This feels significant to me. I'm sure it does to many of you as well, just to be in real space together as a performing artist. This is what it is intended to be. Human beings gathering to share a moment in real time, in real space. It's marvelous. Yes. And how fitting it is that we are performing this act under the umbrella of what I would say is an even more revolutionary act, which is that of sitting in attentive listening. And I want to encourage all of us in this space to start thinking about our intention that we've brought here tonight. I know we are keen to learn, we're keen to respond, engage, but I want to also invite you to this return to listening. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Before I dive into sharing with you the flow of the evening, which I think is important so that we can all be at ease, I do want to draw your attention to, and I have a separate piece of paper for this, the lovely sketches that were on the projector when you arrived. I'm sure you noticed them. They were quite striking. Those are by one of the 7 artists commissioned by the writers Payette. And they're sketches by local artist Spencer Hannah Howarth. And he has something here to describe his work, which I think is really important to share. The title of the work is I Am Always Here. And as Spencer describes his work, for the past few months, I've been doing preliminary work on a project of creating portraiture of people who are experiencing homelessness. When I heard that Writers' Fête was focusing on this social issue, I was delighted to have my current work included. What you saw is the slideshow of my work's early sketches of portraits. The 2 pieces that are on display here and will return to being on display, and you can come once the play is complete, we'll have a break, you can come and take a closer look. Those are a painting and a study. He goes on to say, from my own coming of age in Toronto, I have had personal encounters with people who are homeless and count some of them as friends. More recently, I have spent time with folks experiencing homelessness in Ottawa. I feel honored to share their faces and something of their lives through this work. Mm-hmm. I think Spencer's compassionate eye is also something that we can carry with us. And I thank Spencer for his leadership in that, in his patience in sitting and being still and observant. So as I promised, I'll share with you the flow for the evening. There's some complexities to it, and I don't want anyone to feel unnerved by that. I want us to all really be able to rest and know where we're going. So when I'm done with my lengthy preamble, we will experience the play. Halfway through the play, we'll have a 5-minute break, really to stretch our legs, also to do some quiet internal processing. It will be brief. We'll return to the play. And then when the play is complete, we'll have 15 minutes to mill about, get something to drink, come and look at Spencer's paintings. And then we'll move into what we're referring to as the third act, which I believe as an artist who engages in these social issues, it's really important to partner these artistic expressions with a conversation. A lot of the learning occurs in that conversation, in that communal processing, as I like to call it. So we will frame that communal processing in the form of a panel conversation or panel discussion that will open up to a Q&A. And we're going to bookend, there's just so much richness tonight, I'm just so excited. We're going to bookend that conversation with 2 expressions of art, opening with the centering and grounding work of Dumont, and closing with the lyrics, which I am privileged to share with you, of Lynn Miles' commissioned song for this event as well. So just lots to engage with. We're going to need lots of breathing, deep breathing, to work through all of this good stuff. So now to the play. We decided as a team that it would be really important to offer you some sort of sense of what is going on behind this play and how it came to be. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about that, speaking first to the form. So verbatim theater, and some of you may be familiar with this. Verbatim theater is a term to describe plays that are made up of excerpts from interview transcripts. So they are word for word what was shared by the storyteller. And for this piece in particular, the playwright Joel Bernbaum interviewed 500 people living the experience of homelessness in Victoria, BC between 2012 and 2014. The interviews were then transcribed and edited into the script you're about to hear. One of the unique impacts of this form, I feel, is that it can represent in the traditional media voices that we don't normally hear. And through the magic of theater also gives us an opportunity to allow those voices and that dialogue to transcend boundaries of power. And this is an important thing for us to contemplate as we experience this play. For the original production and for this reading as well, actors of all ages, genders, and backgrounds modulate between characters of differing ages, genders, and backgrounds. And rather than presenting what we might normally expect from a theater piece, which is a narrative arc that we can follow quite clearly, this kind of piece, verbatim theater, really offers us a kaleidoscopic view of an issue, and therefore helps us as an audience to practice, and this is what I feel is really essential, is practicing our empathetic muscles. Exercising them, really rehearsing them for the real world as we engage with these issues. So that said, knowing that the content is going to be what it is going to be, I want to offer what I know to be an important thing, especially when working with partners who have experienced homelessness, to offer you a trigger warning. That there will be content that might be difficult, and I want to extend the invitation from the host team, which includes myself, to be available to you during the play, during the breaks, whenever you need it, to sit with you if there's anything that you have found triggering and need to process. And I encourage those who are attending virtually to reach out to 1 or 2 supports within their network to call up if they need that presence for processing. And finally, I want to return to what I mentioned at the beginning, which is the revolutionary act of active listening. It can be hard when we are engaging with material of this nature to not go into wanting to reframe recontextualize, or even negate, to say that's not actually true, so that we don't have to engage with the hard work of discomfort. And I want to encourage you, and I get a good feeling from this group, that we have the resources to return ourselves to a place of true active listening, of empathetic presence, a compassionate eye, and letting the storytellers tell their story as fully as we can allow. There will be time in our panel conversation to then bring forward that inner struggle that you may have experienced so that we can process it together. And so, without any more preamble, I invite you into the world of this play. And I will see you on the other side.
My name's Christina, and I've talked to a homeless person. Well, me and my dad, because there's a guy on the streets who we always give all our bottles to just so he can give them to the bottle depot.
My name's Julia. People choose to live on the street sometimes because they're sad or depressed.
My name is Jack. Homeless people have a choice to get a job or not. I think some people just choose not to.
My name is Elise. They choose not to work because the money that they already have from their family, they choose it to spend on other things, drugs and licorice. Oh, not licorice, I mean liquor.
My name's Rebecca, and I talked to my parents 2 months ago, and I asked them why they're homeless, and then they said they didn't want a job, or they didn't have enough money, or they didn't really bad in school. So you need to be good at school because we're not going to help you if you're homeless.
My name is Sally. I talked to my dad about maybe, I think a month or so before I started grade 4. And he said, if a homeless person ever comes up to you and asks you for something, he said, feel free to punch them or yell at them or anything, or run like your life. Run for your life.
My name is Piper, and I disagree with Sally's dad because not all homeless people are bad. Some are actually pretty nice. They just can't afford a home. You just can't, but you can't unless you know them if they're good or bad.
I just always remember being a little kid, holding on to my mom's hand really tight, because they're also strangers. Like, it wasn't just the homeless people, but because homeless people were like kind of at my eye level, like they would always be sitting down. They were like some of the people I would notice the most. And I was just confused. It was like very gray. I would think very gray and just sad, like whenever I would see them. I guess I would get very scared, and I feel like my world would get darker. When you look up, like you see the sun and you see happy people walking, but at my eye level, because I was so short and low, like what I saw...
Concrete and homeless people?
Yeah. Like I just saw the fine grain of the dirt and just where people really are, like kind of on the edge.
I just remember seeing them and like relating with like being bad.
Like the dark side?
Yeah, like they were evil. I don't know why or how, but you know, they would ask you for change, and then your parents would be like, keep on walking. I don't think my parents intended on doing that, but it's like, I just remember thinking, I don't want to talk to these people. They're not
scary, intimidating.
Yeah, they're terrifying. Like, I don't think that's what they go for, but that's when you're growing up, I think that's what your parents, like, don't talk to strangers. These are terrible people. You hear about molesting and pedophiles and things like that.
Drugs.
When I think of the first experience with homelessness, I also don't think of one specific time, but just those little encounters. As a kid, walking through downtown with your parents, and my mom sort of looked down on them, I think, sort of, don't give them money, just, Julie, just don't look, stuff like that.
Totally know how you feel.
But then I remember in grade 7, I had a best friend who lived downtown, and since they lived downtown, They were like like her mom embraced it so much. Like she'd bring them blankets, and like my friend was allowed to walk around by herself at night downtown, like go to movies and stuff. So I do that with her, and she recognized homeless people, knew them by name. And like, I sort of saw it in a different light then.
To be quite honest, though, I think that I turn my head and then go, this is disgusting.
It's so harsh.
And I don't know why I do it, but I'm going to be honest that I turn my head and I go like, ooh.
I don't think that we can lump all homeless people together any more than we can say, well, why are you housed?
It's mainly breakdown
There isn't one answer.
of the family unit, breakdown of families. I mean, that's the big difference between my generation and this generation. People say, well, you know, you got to get tough with kids on crime. And I say to them, if they're in their 60s or 50s, I bet you one thing for sure, when you were deciding whether or not you're going to break the neighbor's fence, the one person you absolutely never thought about was a youth court judge. What controlled your behavior was the expectations of your parents, the expectations of your community.
Your peers.
Most of them not wanting to disappoint your parents. But I also knew that if I did disappoint them, there would be consequences for that. So the judge is just completely a poor substitute for a lot of kids if they don't come from that sort of dysfunctional background. The absolute worst thing you can do is engage them in the criminal justice system. Solve it in the community.
Until the majority of them that are drug abusers seek the help that is available to them, it's going to be a problem for quite a while.
When I see homelessness, I feel sad, angry.
Homelessness is a major problem, and it's very sad. Every morning, I walk
As a society,
as I walk past
we think we should be taking care of people and
I'm really
see how many
lucky,
people
you know,
live
to
on the
have a
streets
good,
without.
very supportive family.
Sometimes I find it frustrating.
I don't think it ever could have gotten to that extreme, but you know, as a young person, you know, you have fun.
Sometimes I
Maybe
find
a
it
little too
frustrating.
much fun at
A lot of
college and
times
whatnot.
when I
It
see
could get
homelessness,
derailed easily
it's
with, you
people
know,
panhandling.
Homelessness is unnecessary in this country.
And so
We
many
are a
people
wealthy
who are
biggest
It's
question.
frustrating.
It seems
I
like
also
we
smoke,
do
so
something
if I'm
about it.
downtown,
And it seems to keep happening.
and I have a
It's not
cigarette in
getting
my
worse.
hand, I know that
Yeah,
I'm
I
going
think,
to be bombarded with people asking me
How
for
responsible am I?
things. Because, I mean, regardless of
know, but
where I
there's
live,
No reason why people should be homeless in a country as wealthy as we are.
my family
So not
struggles
every
tax
man
too. And depending.
Homeless person, okay? Hi, my name's Taylor. I'm a college student. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm not your stereotypical homeless person. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I'm sick and tired of this system. You can't get vegetarian food from Salvation Army, eh? Can't get vegetarian there. Those people are scared to death of tofu. I was talking to the director this morning, and she was saying, you know, why are you so complaining about tofu and blah, 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 and we can't afford tofu. And I said to her, you can get tofu for less money than you pay for meat. Don't give me that excuse. Oh, well, we don't have anybody here who can cook it. I have my food safe certificate. Hire me. Oh, no, that would be a conflict of interest. Hiring a homeless person, helping a homeless person, giving them a hand up instead of a handout. That would be a conflict of interest. Pardon me for living. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm looking for a hand up. Well, you eat tofu. Where do you get your protein, eh? Hello?
There's a hunger in the eyes of the homeless. I can't relate to it. There is a hunger in the eyes of the homeless.
It's not hunger about the food that they haven't eaten, and it's not hunger for shelter. It is.
It is hunger for acceptance.
There was this lovely couple that was sitting outside of a restaurant downtown and asked me to buy them some food. And they were wearing like Gore-Tex jackets.
They were sitting in the cold, on the street, in the rain. And the only way they were going to make it for the next little while is if I bought them some noodles. They didn't ask for anything extravagant. They just needed something to eat.
I bought them the food. I mean, it's nothing.
Now, they had some pad thai for dinner
And did what I could, but there was
Something in their eyes. I mean, you feel compassion, but you can't relate. Their experience is nothing like my experience. And I can show them compassion, but I can never understand their experience. So it's really hard to accept them, which doesn't make me sound very nice.
My name is Derek. 3 words. Get a job.
My name is Wilma Phillum. Could I invite people into my home? Because I do have a biggish house, but then that's daunting. A daunting prospect.
My name is Chloe. I give them money, which is probably not a good thing, but I figure, that's what you need. Here you go.
I'm myself is Raheem. They guys they don't have any target in life.
My name's Larry. If everybody looked after their own family, then there wouldn't be a lot of this extra people with no help.
Name is Roger Craig. Well, I think that some of them are mentally challenged, so they need more help than just being let go out and fend for themselves.
My name is Elizabeth. My experience with homelessness in Victoria comes from my daughter, who struggles with mental health and addiction and was homeless for approximately 2 years. It's kind of awkward for me to talk with my grandson here. Well, I don't know. I mean, it was a long process, I mean, there's that slippery slope where, finally, it's, the way she explained it to me was, it's just freeing, just to let everything go. Because your life is in such chaos. It got to the point when it was just freer for her. And, it was... we had this, oh God, it's bringing back all this stuff, this experience when I went to Zeller's and I got her a suitcase on wheels so that her life, she had a 2-bedroom apartment and 2 children, and now her life was down to everything that she owned in a Samsonite suitcase. We would kind of meet and I would take her out for a meal or buy her whatever I could that would fit in the suitcase. And she actually eventually did become addicted herself. I took her children because the children got apprehended and I couldn't bear it. So it changed this whole thing for her. And ultimately, for the people that love and support her, and she did a big stint, 15 months in jail. And when she got out, finally, this last time, she got some supportive housing with some mental health support attached to that. It hooked her up, so she got persons with disability funding. So she had some money, so she wasn't trying to always get money. And typically that was through illegal stuff. And, it's been almost 2 years now. We're finally at the place where she can be alone with her children. And she was putting her life back together, so it was some very hard times for her and for the people that love her. I mean, what I did learn was how, the important thing was for me to continue to love her and to have a relationship with her. Because, there was a lot of encouragement to, shut the door or walk away, leave her. It's just hard to read the letters to the editor and people really don't see people who are homeless as their brothers and sisters. Or their community. And really 6 months of bad shit to any one of us and we could be homeless. You never know. So, well, this may sound kind of hokey, but I'm a Christian, and one of the most important things I've learned is, it's easy to love the people you love, but the real challenge is to love the people you don't love. And that is the challenge, that is the opportunity to grow as a human being.
Home is your security.
Your castle.
Your foundation of everything.
You don't have a solid home, you don't have a good foundation.
You raise yourself in your home.
Your own furniture.
Your own belongings.
It's safety.
It's security.
It's everything.
Home is beyond everything.
You don't have it, you have nothing.
And it ruins everything because you're so open to destruction.
Destruction to yourself, destruction to other people.
It is something that is more valuable than anything you'll ever know.
You lose your home, you lose everything.
You lose your self-esteem,
Your pride,
you
lose everything. Unbelievable. It's
I know. Trust me. I've been there. And it shattered me. And it still affects me. My goal now is to try to get a new home. Saving like crazy. I need that stability back. I need to know I've got my roots back. My feet on the ground. I need that. I don't have my home. I don't really have anything. I don't know where I am. I don't have a real true identity anymore. I'm lost. And I'm bitter. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm tired. You name it. All these things come through me. Home is home. I was a salon owner for many years. I decided to venture out and teach and buy a school. The school was there for 35 years. I bought it in 2005, in December. And I did not realize that the city was going to move in next to me, Kool-Aid Society. And I pulled a blank. Outreach program. In the meantime, they were relocating, and I didn't realize they're going to be in temporarily while they're building the $4.5 million building. Then I opened the school. The first month in December was running pretty decent. People were getting the hang of running the school. I had 3 instructors, 25 students, come paying $10,000 per program, 10-month program. Everything's looking good. Next thing you know, we start the street people. The outreach program opened up in the old bingo palace temporarily for 6 months while the building was being processed. And I met a few people, which I won't mention names, that came to approach me from the city. And I went, I wish you guys had told me. I just blew a whole bunch of money. Was this going to jeopardize my building? No, everything's promised. The project ended up being delayed, and it took 1.5 years. So they were down on the block for 1.5 years. Pretty well every business that was on that block went under. We had circumstances of narcotics used on the streets. We had numerous fights, people coming and urinating in the front doors of buildings. Some of my students were very good-looking young ladies. They were approached, and there was offers of prostitution. There was offers of drug use, and so on. I had numerous fights inside the school. I had 2 girls go toe-to-toe outside. One girl got stabbed. ran into my school, locked herself into my bathroom, and the other girl came running in after. So of course, all these young, paying $10,000 for the season to go to my school, start freaking out. Next thing you know, I had parents up my yin-yang complaining, and one after another, kids started pulling out. Because of, I'm a parent. I have 2 children myself, 2 daughters. I would have did the same thing with my own kids. If my kids was in trouble, I would have broken up with the school.
Fucking sleeping on the streets, on the sidewalk for so long, and they put me on a mattress. What an icky fucking feeling that is. It's just, feels like, for me it's like sleeping in mud. Like I slept in fucking mud all during the raining season this whole winter. And I still stay dry. But fucking, it's like that fucking icky, squishy feeling. You know, my parents used to think it was fun, especially when you're drunk. You're drinking and you're fucking like, you do the worm, laying there fucking drunk out of your mind and stuff like that. But, and then they put you on a fucking mattress, just. It's like the same, but not quite the same, because it's very uncomfortable. And even when they put you in a fucking house, you know, I slept on the floor. Physically, I was indoors. Mentally, I was still outside.
The majority of us people that are on the street live out of garbage cans. People like, they used to bug me about eating out of the garbage. I eat better out of a garbage can than I eat in this place. Like the food in this institution I'm in right now is garbage compared to what I can eat out of a garbage can, if that makes any sense. Even right now as we're sitting here, what time is it now? About noon? See, you go to the Swiss Chalet on Douglas Street and go through their garbage can right now because their garbage truck comes around 12:30. You can go through there and find donuts from Tim Hortons, Swiss Chalet chicken from the Swiss Chalet there, and it's a lot, not just a little bit, it's like bags full. And I mean, the kitchen staff know we do it, so the kitchen staff throw it in separate bags. You get bags of chicken, bags of French fries, coleslaw, potato salad, and it's like I remember when I invited my mom or stepmom and my dad for lunch one day, I didn't tell them it was coming out of the garbage can. and they were so impressed with how much money I had spent on this meal, and I mean, I'm sure they'll probably hear this eventually, but whatever, you know, okay. And I remember smiling, and I remember them going, well, why are you like this? If you got money to buy this, why are you living on the streets? I'm like, well, you know, I didn't have the heart to say it, you know. You're eating dumpster diving food, you know what I mean.
I don't know. I was, got kicked out when I was young. Living in shelters and stuff, started to get to be the habit, the norm, right? Yeah, it's just a struggle. Struggle always continues. Struggle's always there. For me, that's how I grew up and that's how I function nowadays. It's the struggle. And if I don't have a struggle, there's something wrong. Or I'm in jail. So, and even in jail, it's a struggle too, but it's not as bad as being on the streets. Streets fucking could have been just as worse. I was out on my own, I was struggling. And I'm still trying to spit at the world from the curb. Look down at the world from the curb. I just don't want to look down at the world from the gutter anymore. That's what I was doing. It was like, you know, I was out in the world and I was like, I stared down at society as like watching society walk by every day and like, you know, just having a resentment. Because they're dealing one way and I'm living another. You know they're trying to frown down on me. You know, these little ladies always bugging us. You know, saying you guys get a haircut, get a job, they like, oh fuck off. You know, we haven't had too much fun. We're having too much fun. We're making more money than the usual person at that time. Yeah. Like, like literally standing in the gutter and staring down at the world.
I mean, well, you're meeting me inside a corrections facility, right? So most people have the automatic assumption right there. But I mean, other than that, I'm usually really easygoing. My older brother introduced me to heroin and crystal meth, hash, weed. You know what I mean? So I was about 16, I guess. Everything just started going right down. Went from like being a happy, normal kid, basically, with a little bit of problems, to selling drugs. Selling weed, selling hash, selling cocaine, and me being stupid. I sold to an undercover cop when I was 17, I guess. Sold him hash. Then when I was 18, I think I sold him a cocaine. And the funny thing about it was the same cop. Drugs fill a gap for hunger, loneliness, and staying awake. Because when you're on the streets and you have nowhere to go, the last thing you can do is sleep. Sleep is your enemy. Because once you sleep, you got an officer there kicking you in the face or kicking you in the guts to get up and get going, right? So once you add a drug to that factor, that takes a lot of the problem away. And once you don't have the drug, you got a hardcore crash too, right? Where it'll make you like do things that you normally would not do, right? Like I can think of times when I've met people that have been fresh on the street, get involved with crystal meth, GHB. All of a sudden, next thing you know, they're selling themselves. Right? Like it's like you do strange things. Like people do weird things once they're on narcotics. And even if they don't want to do them, once you're homeless, your hunger sets in, frustration sets in, you start getting sleepy. All it takes is a couple of people to push you down, and all of a sudden, you're right into that circle with the drugs.
I couldn't run it. I couldn't run the school the way it was. It was a crisis. That was my livelihood. That was my wife's livelihood. My children's livelihood. That was their future. It was my equity. And then it's gone. You ask me truthfully if I'm bitter? Yes, I am. I'm over it now, but at the time I was very bitter because I lost everything. I lost my house. I used my house to pay the bank back, to forfeit all the money I borrowed for the banks. I was actually, to be honest, I was home. I was a business owner with 3 businesses. That ended and I became homeless too. I was out of a house and you're bitter. I had that house for 10 years. I renovated it. I did everything to it. I put money into it. It was my retirement too. It was my investment. I'm self-employed, so that was our goal in the businesses, our goal to retire. And when you hear that, I was so angry at everything. I was so bitter at everyone around me because you've took something that I worked so hard for away from me, and I can't do anything about it.
Homelessness is a way of life that we get caught up in. People look at us like we're worthless, useless, and degenerates, but nobody stops to think that we're somebody's children. Every one of us that are on the street, we're somebody's child, no matter how you look at us or think about us. Doctors will label kids ADHD or hyper disorder or are violent, right? And they'll prescribe medication for it. Well, most of the time, it's as simple as kids having a hard time understanding ABC and 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? So if they were to look at the big picture, instead of going, well, okay, here's a prescription, give your kid these pills. Well, they just started a problem there where addictive personality sets in. I mean, I was at school one day, and I remember the teacher called me up in front of the board, right? In front of the class, right? Something. I couldn't do it. All the kids started laughing. Well, that was the first day I actually realized, okay, well, I can't figure this out. First kid that I got in a fist fight with him. I got expelled from school. And then from that forward, I was 14 or 15. All my school life after that went to hell in a handbag. When I went to school too, there was 35, 40 kids in school in a classroom. So it's pretty hard to put one-on-one with one kid. Then once I got labeled, they stuck me in behavioral schools, and that was the fork in the road for me. Basically, if you were bad, they used to make you go outside and run around a 200-meter lap track. My parents agreed to it, so by the end of second year, 2 years of being there, I was a good long-distance runner.
My dad was actually both my parents were in residential school. And then my dad went to military school after that, so that was a double whammy. He was what we call damaged goods, big time. He was an alcoholic, and even to this day, he still denies that, he did nothing wrong. Which really, really makes me angry. Because there was times when I was a little kid, I remember flying across the room upside down, watching the TV go by, kind of thing, When I was 9 years old, he broke a broomstick on my back, and from that point on, I was 9 years old. I swear I'd never cry for him again, and I never did. And even to this day, I hardly shed a tear. I mean, well, I do, but not to the extent that that it's healthy. It just happens sometimes. Yeah. Ever since I was 9 years old, I never cried. I never cried for anything. I never cried for anyone. And I remember I got hit by a car, and I remember not crying or anything like that. And remember the paramedics looking at me, going like, "Man, you're a strong kid." And oh yeah, I'm lying there fucking broken on the fucking road, and I'm saying, "Yeah, that's right, I'm strong."
Well, I'm Samantha, and I've lived here from grade 7 till grade 12. And then I went off to university and to college, and I worked. I've just returned, I guess, probably 2-3 years ago now. Recently been living in Central America, where I ran my own business. I've been running my own business for more than 25 years. So I guess it's been over 25 years that I've been gone. I've only been a single mom since I returned, which has only been, I guess, about 3 years. And I tried to be in Vancouver at first, but then I needed support, and my family's here. My parents, anyway. It's been 3 years. I don't like to admit that to anybody, because I haven't got a job in 3 years. So, yeah, it's been 3 years. When I apply for jobs, I just say, recently returned. But, I've got educationally, I've got a degree, I have a diploma, I have a certificate, so that's 3 different areas. And then I've got endless courses outside of that, and business management, and you name it. Health and wellness, and I've worked in a lot of, different areas. And homelessness is, it's painful. It's degrading. It's almost hurtful. When it comes down to having a family, it's embarrassing. And I wish it upon nobody. I wish it on nobody. there's nothing worse than when, if you can't be with your child and raise your child, then you shouldn't have a child, right? But I'm capable of doing it. It's not that I'm incapable. I'm completely capable. But it just takes a bad set of circumstances that come along, and it all gets coupled together, thinking you're making a really great decision. And yeah, I look back and I think, did I make a right decision to move back? I go over every decision I've made, that I've ever made, because I doubt myself. So it's anybody. It's anybody. And it doesn't take an addict, and it doesn't take somebody uneducated. I come from a really good family, a really great background. You know, I don't have any addicts in my family. I don't come from an abused family. It doesn't take all that to make it happen. And it doesn't mean that I've been in the system all my life. I'm in my 40s, and I've just started. My daughter doesn't like to come grocery shopping with me because, you know, I put the cart in, and we had to walk away and leave our groceries. She was so embarrassed. She'll never come out grocery shopping with me anymore because she's scared. There's no money, you know? She's not supposed to be worried about that stuff, you know? She's a kid. She's just a little girl. It's not her problem. Home is a beautiful word. Home is where your heart is. And that's where I've raised my daughter. She knows, she always says it. She'll say, home is where the heart is. And it's got to be somewhere that's safe. And that you can make a happy place and be cheerful. I don't know, just somewhere where you can have fun. And then, you know, I remember we had so much fun. We used to have so much fun. And
Okay, so we're at our place, and it's 5:30 in the morning, or a little earlier. I've just picked up some donuts, and we're planning on doing this morning is just waking up the real homeless and addicted and mentally ill that are sleeping on the streets and that we still haven't been able to house. And we'll see about anywhere between 50 and 60 people this morning as we go. So we just passed a couple sleeping in the doorway there. They just gave us a wave. We're passing now the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and a couple waiting on us there. Oh, we're pulling up to Yates Streets now, and there's a couple waiting on us here. Oh, baby, it's cold outside. Baby, it's cold outside. Hey, did I tell you about the Newfoundland girl? Oh, God. Okay, she comes here, and she doesn't pay her rent, right? So she says to me, I say, how's it going? I got evicted. I can't believe I got evicted. I shouldn't have got evicted, Rev, you know? you know? That's what she says. And then she said, I didn't have the money for the rent, so I bought a case of 24. I brought it up to the landlord, we drank it together, and he still kicked me out. Well, that's how we do it in Newfoundland. You know, bring up a case of 2-4. So she couldn't understand why the guy kicked her out. So now we're going the wrong way, eh? Oh yeah, one way, and the cop pulls you over and says, "Where do you think you're going?" "Oh, I don't know, but I must be late because everyone's coming back. Good morning."
We have street youth. One night a week in our hall, our volunteers provide them with food, supper and breakfast. People put on the collection plate whatever they want, and that's what we operate on. There was a time perhaps when there were far more people involved in churches. About 7% of the population are involved in a church. So it seems that when those kinds of things are said, 93% of the people are saying, well, let's let those 7% look after it. But we're not going to actually help.
Lazarus is at your door. We're not open the door, guys. No, where's the word coming into action? Where are the words coming into action? I want to try and find a church that's going to let me in. Give me that hallway. Forget about the. I can open it up at 6 o'clock at night. They could use a washroom. I'll be there. And you could let them sleep in on side on the floor. I'll have them out at 6 o'clock in the morning. You won't even know we're there. Because they're heating the place anyway. Won't cost you any money. Here are all the excuses, every one of them. Let's pray about it. Yeah, that's just get the fuck out of my face in street language. That's fuck off, you know. That's what it'd be in the street language. Let's pray about it. Fuck off. Yeah, street language. That's just a conversion from the Greek to the Roman. That's what happened. Yep, that's what happened at this one church. The guy says to me, I'm there, I'm trying to get them involved, get the church involved, because they're sleeping on the steps. At the exact moment the hour's up, he grabs a hold of me and, fuck off, he's saying. Okay, I get the hint. I know both languages, I'm bilingual. I'm bilingual.
The governments have then also, at the same time, divested their responsibility in being able to really care for all the people. It seems like because various churches and other spaces are willing to set aside their space so that people have a place to lay their head, I'm not sure that it's done any favors in the long run, because the people that really need to be able to make the decisions aren't making them as fast as they need to be made. We've taken away the urgency. That's why. We've taken away the urgency.
And then you get people to drive by and they'll holler, oh, homeless people, get a job. Would you hire me? I'm walking around with a backpack, 90 pounds worth of backpack. I haven't showered in about a week, and I'm half strung out on drugs. Would you hire me for your construction site? Knowing that I could show up today, but not tomorrow. Why? Because I'm homeless, and you get caught up in that cycle. Street just kind of sucks you up and spits you out. Even for the most experienced person. I mean, I'm pretty experienced with living on the street, and still manage to get the best of me. There's only two major outcomes to the street. Long-term street life is like death or in jail for a long time. At least I ended up in jail.
A couple years ago, when I was at work in the streets, I was out working and I had a girlfriend, and a guy had picked me up, and it ended up being a brutal rape. And when I when he'd thrown me out of the car, it took me well over an hour to get back to where we were camped. And when I got there, she looked at me and she said, no matter how the shape I was in or how bad that I looked, all she said to me was, you deserve it. You had it coming, and you were the only one out there. And right then and there, I realized that people aren't gonna care because I'm a prostitute. And that's when I realized I had to make a difference within me. Change that. I tried to go back after that, but it was just, a vehicle would come up and I couldn't do it. It was just that fear. I was terrified to death. And I just couldn't do it anymore because I realized that I'm not going to have that happen to me again, because the next time I'm not going to walk away. And when I finally realized that and I knew that, okay, I'm only doing that to support my addiction. And supporting my addiction is taking me away from my family, my kids, how it's stopping me from having a healthy life, healthy relationship. The one incident that I never forget is I was walking down Douglas, and I was pushing a shopping cart, and I had my belongings, all our belongings in a grocery cart, and I was pushing it because my girlfriend was going to get cigarette butts so we could roll tobacco that day. And this couple, this older couple, were walking. They came out of this hotel, and they let me pass. But when I was passing them, like, they were immaculately dressed, just beautiful. And they were coming out of this beautiful hotel, and he's like, don't look at her. Don't look at her. It's disgusting, I know. I just don't look at her. It's just gross. How could people even live like that? Yeah. And I stopped. Right then and there, I turned around and said, excuse me, but if you don't like the fact that I'm having to live with my belongings in a grocery cart, then either give me the money to get me off the street, help me get off the street, help me get off the street, help me get a home and get off the street, do something. But don't just be ignorant. And I turned around with my head held high, and I walked away. And that's when I realized that people don't understand homelessness.
We're not like everyone else. We don't want to be like everyone else.
Because we don't work for a living, because we don't.
Well, I want to work.
For youth, there are work studies. That stops at age 20, sometimes 25. There's nothing between 25 and 50. Nothing. Most people I know that are on the street that, or are on disability or on welfare want to work, but they don't know how to do anything else than the crimes or shit that they did before. You know, like, I could steal your car, but I couldn't fix it. You know what I mean? I'd like to be able to fix your car rather than steal it. Don't paint the brush, you know what I mean? Like, no labels. Like, people are people. You never heard that saying, walk in someone else's shoes?
I've had a few friends. When they've been looking for work, for not having a phone number, so putting the shelter's phone number and address, that's on my resume. But a lot of people have said that companies will take one look at the address or phone the phone number, and it's the shelter. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to hire that person. They live in a shelter. Yeah, it's just them thinking everybody's the same. Like, I've never done drugs, and I'm not an alcoholic, but yet that's what people see me as because I'm homeless. It's not fair.
Scared for you.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm scared for you. Because when I was in your position, my education came from the next guy, who wanted my fucking money, who wanted my abilities to fucking make him more money. Let me say my piece. I was in your position one time, and my education came fast. It came fast and furious. It came faster than all what the fucking schools have to offer. One time I didn't drink and drug, but everybody was doing it. And the only way I could fit in and fucking get something done was to do it. So I'm scared for you. And
I'm fine.
hope you don't fall in the same trap as, others. You're gonna be running into a lot of roadblocks, and you're gonna have to make a lot of tough choices. I see a person like yourself, and I'm not stereotyping you or anything, but I've seen people like you, and I still see people here, years and years.
Yeah. On the street when someone would show up so they can't pay rent, we call them Twinkies. They have no idea about street life. Didn't do drugs, didn't drink.
So you guys are all stereotyping me, just like everyone else is stereotyping you?
Yeah, that's true.
It scares me to think someone else is scared for me, that I guess it's really easy for me to get into a bad situation, and it's scary.
I have nowhere I can go that I'm not around drugs. I'm not around the users, and I'm not around the dealers. I feel like I'm losing my sanity, but I just don't have it. Like, I don't have somewhere I can go, just sit down, relax, put my feet up and go and breathe and go, okay, I don't gotta worry about it. The shelters, those are the problems. And it makes it harder, knowing that, okay, do I have to go to this bathroom and have to deal with the rig boxes? Or do I have to go in with broken crack pipes? Or do I have to deal with the drug paraphernalia? Or do I have to smell the alcohol? Triggers, they never go away. They need places for the people that are on the streets that don't use. Or the ones like myself that are trying to get away from it, because it's everywhere. I can't even walk out the front door of the shelter and not see it across the street. I can't even sit on the step with my husband and have a cigarette and not have someone around the corner from me smoking crack.
Where we sleep, a lot of people that walk by and they'll just look at us, and as soon as you go, "Hi, how you going?" they turn their head like, "Oh no, I didn't look at you. You're not there." When we tell some people walk by, you don't even see them. They're like, "Hey, hi, how you doing?" When I'm doing my bottle run, close to 100% of the people will say good morning to me, or when I say it to them, say it back. But when I'm laying in my sleeping bag, maybe 10% will acknowledge me, which I don't understand that.
All they see is that they know we're doing out there working. We're doing something. We're not lazing around. We're out there trying to make it an honest dollar.
Just say hi back. I'm going to put up a sign saying, when I say hi to you, that's all I want, is for you to say hi back. I'm not asking you for anything. Nothing makes my day more when somebody, instead of me having to say good morning to them, they say, "Oh, good morning, how are you today?" Then I know I'm going to have a good day.
I prefer to be homeless right now. I don't want a place right now. Something inside me prefers it. I don't know quite know what it is, but it's adventure. I like it out there, you know. Don't sleep in no shelters or anything. I always get sick in those shelters. I'd rather be outside.
I'm not saying the family problems created my drug problem, but they're both connected in a way. And so one thing led to another, and this is where I am today.
Some family members get away with it, and we don't.
Yeah.
Well, some members do it, and we do it, but it's all right for them to do it, but not us.
Or they won't admit
Or they won't admit it.
Do drugs.
Or alcohol.
Oh yeah, or alcohol. That's the worst.
Worst thing.
The whole drug out there, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people just can't have fun when they drink. They have a big problem with alcohol. And they think because they're an alcoholic, and I'll say it. I'm a crackhead, and they figure they're better than me because, oh well. So what if I get drunk? So what if I have a cracky? At least I don't
Be violent.
Yeah, yeah. Personally, I don't think that they go hand in hand because I know a lot of people that are homeless that aren't addicts, and I know a lot of people that are addicts that aren't homeless. I've never had more friends in my life since I've been on the street. And some of the best people I met in my life are people that I've met on the street. They're real people.
Don't judge you.
They're just good people. There's a lot, well, not a lot. There's some bad people out on the street. But I'd say 90% of them are good people. People on the street, when you see, is what you get.
That about sums it up for me right there.
There's more security for two people, right? With more than just brothers. We're friends.
We're friends, yeah. Yeah, we look after one another.
Yeah, there are things that I don't like about it, but I'm not unhappy.
No.
I get bummed out now and then, but
Yeah, when you get rained on or something like that, or snowed on, somebody steals
or
your
if
stuff,
somebody steals my empties, that bums
or
me out.
steals your sleeping bag or
Oh,
something like
well.
that.
Life
It
goes on.
Shakespeare. 1, 2, 3.
I'm afraid I'm gonna fail. Yeah. I'm afraid that I'm just not gonna be able to get to where I want. But I do my best to let that fear be buried, because I tell myself it doesn't matter what it takes. You can do it. That's what I tell myself. What I need is to just my strength to keep going, to survive every day, one day at a time. To make it through is what I need. If I wouldn't have been through the abusive relationships or the rapes and the bad dates or anything, I truly feel I would not be who I am or as strong as I am today.
If I look back, if I could turn the time window back, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have opened the school. I wouldn't have bought it. I wouldn't even have gone anywhere near that place. I would have my 2 salons, not the school. We couldn't rent a place because we couldn't go and ask for a credit check or anything because we just lost our house. We're in my father-in-law, who's now a widow, and he's got a condo, a two-bedroom condo with 5 people. It wasn't fun. My wife and I slept on the pull-down couch for about 3 months. A homeless person to me, when I look at them, if they have mental issues or alcohol issues, I look at them different. If they have the same qualities that I do, they look healthy, they look normal, they don't have any different from me. They have the same opportunities in life to do things right. I'm going to be blunt about this and say this, and I'll say it right now. Don't take the easy street. What I'm saying by the easy street is there's 55 places in Victoria that I can get food. And I can have food day after day. So, you know, I could have 55 days, I could have a meal at 55 different locations. That's going through churches, outreach programs, you name it. Why? Why wouldn't I? Good question. Pride.
I'm driving down Blanchard Street Monday morning, and there she is, Alana, in the middle of the street, fixing her belt. The pants are too big for her, she's wearing jeans, and the belt is twice long. So she's trying to find a hole in a belt, but there's no hole there. So I pull over. What are you doing? You know? I have nowhere to go. I was kicked out of Sandy Merriman. So I get her back, and she tells me she's been, I get her back, I bring her back to our place. I don't do the rest of the run. I'm going to deal with her. So she's wearing Depends. She's telling me the Depends are wet. She's got her period. She hasn't got any pads. She doesn't know where to go. Multiple issues. Kicked out, the police. I feel sorry for the police. They don't know what to do with her. Hospital doesn't want her anymore. She hasn't really got a physical problem. They know that she's got a personality disorder, so it's at the bottom scale where mental health is. Really, you know, human rights. It's that fine line where do we have a responsibility to pick her up? What do we do with her if we do? You know, the issue is really housing. She's you know, all sorts of things. Everyone's passing on the buck because we got a mental health woman, not addicted, not on drugs, mental health. Pissed her pants and, you know. So, Jesus, I'm scared.
This whole set of closing of mental health institutions turned a lot of people who previously had a sheltered existence out onto the streets to fend for themselves.
We've disenfranchised and trans-institutionalized people into other types of facilities, such as our jails and our prisons, such as their family members who are already overburdened, such as nursing homes and other types of healthcare facilities that aren't equipped to deal with the mentally ill. And nowhere in equivalency to the thousands of beds that were closed.
Yeah, okay, so I'm homeless.
Far worse off today than they were then.
I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not getting good food anymore. I'm missing nutrients. Missing nutrients may cause delusions, agitation, you know, lack of sleep, obviously. That's so... I'm spinning out. I'm cold a lot. You know, I can't get comfortable. I'm depressed because I can't get work. I'm losing my self-esteem. All of these things are happening quite normally. I'm on the street. Somebody now responds to that. They see me and they go, well, look, let's listen to this guy. He's agitated. He's excited. He's not making sense. He's talking. He's whatever these things are that they see in me, that are really just a product of me being homeless. And they say there's a medication that's going to get you stabilized, and then we'll sort out your problems. Then we'll get you into a home. Just like, you know, any other addiction, drug. These chemicals are very powerful, so it calms me down. Maybe it makes me feel a little bit better for a short time. And I'm like, okay, I want this. Yeah. And therefore now you're in a cycle of poverty and a cycle of homelessness. The drugs aren't going to help you get off it. The longer you stay on them, the more disabled you become.
So I'm trying to check her through the system half the day. Barred from here and she's barred from there, and she makes a scene of herself, that she knows how. Naked, yelling, spitting at people, and of course when she eats, she's sticking her hand down into her crotch, under her thing, and then grabs something. That's attention grabbing. And it grabs everyone's attention. And not only does it grab everybody, it's gross, People are eating at the same time, and and so people are yelling at her, "Oh, fuck you." So I don't know what to do. I know I'm perplexed because she cannot go. So I called the cops and said, "Listen, what I want you to do is I want you to pick her up in front of our place at the end of supper. Bring her to the cop shop, sit her there until 9 o'clock, and then drive her to the drop-in center." Well, we're changing shift. Probably not. You gotta be putting yourself in their shoes.
Everybody wants the perfect homeless person. The sort of Jean Valjean. People in these conditions have problems. I mean, they have addictions, they have mental health, they have made bad choices. Often you and I will make bad choices. We just have the physical or mental or financial capacity to get ourselves out of them. These people don't.
Let's talk about Alana. The police picked her up that day. Sandy Merriman dealt with her that day. StreetLink dealt with her. I dealt with her. My staff dealt with her. How much money is that? And so, at the end of the day, after all that, I leave her on the fucking corner. Well, unacceptable. I'm sorry, Rev. Unacceptable. What you did, unacceptable. What we did is unacceptable. This is not caring. This is not a caring, concerned community. That is not. And yes, there's a gap there. It's a big gap. Alana doesn't have to be committed. I don't think she needs to be put into a straitjacket. And I don't think that at all. There has to be some resources where she has some dignity in her human rights. I had a good friend, a psychiatrist. He said they're gonna die with their fucking rights on. They're gonna die with their rights on. Well, and that's what Alana's doing right now. She's dying with her rights on. And we're gonna say, well, we did all we could. We couldn't pick her up, eh? Look, Rev, look what the Rev did there, Well, what more could he do? Fuck you! Rev hasn't done enough because Rev hasn't cried enough. Rev hasn't screamed enough about what is needed. Rev knows what's needed. Rev knows it. He's got 30 frickin' years on this street. Rev knows what's needed. The system knows what's needed. We know what's needed. Rev's not the only one. He's not the only one that knows we know what's needed. And we have done nothing. We've done nothing.
I don't think homelessness is simply an extension of poverty. I think homelessness is the inability for an individual, whatever reason, to plug into society properly.
Homelessness is a product of our economic system. In fact, I think that's an important way of looking at it that people often forget. We start to look at it as something that is a product of an individual. Somebody's got to lose the game if everyone's trying to win money.
Any city in our country, there's a homeless industry. There's people making money on homelessness. There's people surviving on homelessness. All my staff, everything I have in my home, my car, everything is on the backs of the poor. Everything that I have. Everything that I've ever earned in my life in dollars comes from the backs of the poor because I work in industry. That industry is created by society itself. Yes, there is an industry. It's a big industry. I employ 51 people. I put my budget's $3 million, and I put $3 million back into the economy. So this industry is also adding to the economy. This industry is employing people. This industry is part of our social structure.
How far are we prepared to go? How much pain are we going to allow ourselves to sign up for, to end homelessness? It's going to be money. It's going to be moral challenges. God forgive, money isn't going to be used rightly, or no one helped me when I was down, or, those challenges. How do you get past that? The citizens, the common man on the street. What would you make? How would they get involved?
If I was to come up to you and ask and say, look, hi, my name's Rex, would you have a moment of your time to hear you just have a moment to hear what I have to say for a second? How open are you to listening to a person like myself or others like me about our situation? And would you be there, be willing to listen to us and give direction?
Probably not terribly willing. I'd far rather sit in a conference somewhere and listen to the plight of thousands of homeless people and try to get to the bottom of what the situation is. I'm not sure that listening to one anecdote, no matter how important that is to an individual's life, is important in solving a wider problem.
Well, have a good day, you stupid ass motherfucker.
I came from a fairly good home. I had a fairly good upbringing. I was taught ethics to work for money. So I thought, nah, that wouldn't happen to me. No matter who you are in life, you're one step away, one paycheck away from being homeless. And when I found that out on the rigs, I remember somebody saying that to me. I laughed at them. Sure enough, what happened? I went from making money to picking garbage cans in less than 2 months. Do you realize you're one step away from being homeless no matter having a job or not? Whether you have a fixed income or not.
Yes, my husband's father just told us at Christmas, when Christmas is the big consumer time, and he said, do you understand you're one step away from being homeless? And wanted us to donate a lot of our money to the homeless. We're, as we consider, lower middle class. I feel like you should go to Broadmead and ask them if they're making $300,000 a year, how much did they donate? If we donate $20, should they donate $2,000? Or does it not affect them as much because they're not one step away from poverty?
My name is Ed, and I live in Broadmead.
My name is Betty.
We have no immediate contact, but you can hardly be unaware of the situation if you spend any time walking or doing anything throughout different parts of the city.
Well, I had hoped that when I came here actually to get more directly involved with some of the inner city social issues. And I found fairly early on that those issues are very complex. And I never found a niche where I could actually engage or be involved in that issue. Maybe I just haven't pushed myself in that area. I just thought it was really sticky in that nobody could agree on how people in the streets should be helped. Didn't seem to be one united effort.
Well, the answer, I think, is that we should be prepared to give within our means, both within terms of effort as well as financial resources. I haven't thought of ourselves, living in the neighborhood that we do, as being exceptionally advantaged. This is not Uplands. And so when you're speaking with people in Uplands, you can say that somebody from Broadmead wants to know what they're prepared to do.
My name's Jamie, and I live in Uplands. Homelessness is difficult to understand. My family came. My family were refugees from Europe in World War II. They lived in DP camps in Germany for 4 years, came to Canada with nothing. Having grown up in a family that were refugees, that worked their way out of it, there's something difficult. There's difficulty understanding homelessness. I'm an engineer by trade, and engineering problems tend to be quite easy to solve once you define what the actual problem is. Most of the time in engineering is spent figuring out what the problem is. Maybe that's where we are with homelessness. What is the problem? Who are these people? If proposals are made that set out, reasonable and positive means by which a problem like this could be solved, I'd be willing to contribute to it monetarily.
Hi, my name's Rex. Would you have a moment of your time to hear you just have a moment of your time to hear what I have to say for a second? How open are you to listening to a person like myself or others like me about our situation?
Yeah, I'd be willing to sit with you. And I guess what I'd want to find out from you is who are you? Who are you, and why are you in your situation? Maybe the two of us can try to work out a way out.
Oh, fuck. They said yes. What now?
What can you do to change your life situation, and how can we help? What is it today you're going to do that's going to move you in the right direction?
Today, keep my cat. He keeps me grounded. Keeps me from going out on the streets, because it's like, you see, it's like these little distractions that help. Mostly my cat. My cat, yeah, well, my cat teaches me unconditional love. Didn't have a lot of that before.
A week ago, with my husband, met this man. He gave my husband a job and helping to deliver these flyers door to door. And my husband worked Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And this man seen that my husband is a very hard, solid worker. Yeah. And on Sunday, he goes, somebody did this favor for me of when I was a dealer, when I was a user, when I was homeless and living on the street. He took me home. He fed me. He gave me a safe place to sleep. He asked me to do one favor, to make him one promise, to do this for others. And this gentleman, he's tried to help numerous people, and they've either used him, ripped him off, stolen from his home, and, used him mainly. But when he met my husband, and then he met me, he goes, "You guys are coming home with me." He took us to his home. First day he meets me, he's taken us to his home. Goes, "There's a computer, there's the TV, there's a kitchen, help yourself, we'll be back in a couple of hours." knowing he's given us his home. He's given my husband a job for the next several months, put a job in my lap, given us free reign to his house, and we don't have to pay him anything. He just wants us to save our money for a future for ourselves. And one day, once we're well established, to do this to somebody else. And I looked at him, and all I could say was, not a goddamn problem. Done, you know? So it was the best thing I think that could have happened to us. No, because we were grateful for it. You know, I can't wait. You know, because I want to get my own home now. Yeah, but I know it's going to take some time, and it'll happen. I have more faith than anything that this gentleman has shown me that there might be 1 million people out there. But there are still that handful that are waiting to give you the shirt off their back and take you under their wing and say, hey, let's get this done. That means a lot. Because everybody thinks they lost that, but it exists. I know that for a fact.
After everything came from out of losing the schools and the houses, and I started rethinking about a career change, I've been doing hair for 30 years. I did a lot with it. And I started thinking about how would I get into... My passion now is to help other people. Is that my destiny now? Was this lesson, as we talked about it before, what is it for? Was this what it was for? Was my destiny to look at possibly I need to help other people? In some ways, I'm trying to build the blocks again. As I say, getting my house back. Getting my home back. Is that where I want to be in the future? Do I want to go and help people and try to be an advisory of what I've seen and different people and say, you know, when I see these things, can we try them? You know, and I'd like to see our city, I'd love to see us have a better way of life for everybody. It's across the board.
Home is the land. Home is the river. Home is the sky. Home is the wind. It's the sound of birds. It's the smell of the earth in the spring and the fall. It's the sky at night. It's the northern lights dancing. Homelessness is dispossession. It's genocide. It's brokenness. But the most important thing of all is not being able to be grounded. Homelessness is in your spirit. It's not having a place in your stories. We can tell stories about place, but we don't have a place in like we're not there anymore, and we can't go there. You can when you think about that, this is our land. This is our homeland. I don't think about homelessness as, when you think about it, I don't think about it as sleeping in the riverbank. I don't, that's not what comes to mind first. because homelessness happens inside you first, as a spiritual loss.
The only solution that I ever thought that would work would be for a group of individuals to get together and have a simple agreement between themselves to help one homeless person, and not in bits, but to actually commit themselves to that person for 6 months or a year, for a place to live and to be their family, and to get them trained for a job, help them find a job, help them find a purpose in life. You just get 10 people together. Just do it for one person. That's a good thing, right? What about the little kid on the, there's a little kid on a beach, and the tide had gone out, and the beach was covered with starfish. Thousands and thousands of starfish. And they were all dying because the sun was baking them. And so the little kid was picking up one starfish at a time and throwing it into the water to rescue it. A man said, "Well, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to make any difference." And the little kid says, "Well, it made a difference for that one." It's kind of the only solution, right? One at a time. Not with the government. They can't do anything. There's too much bureaucracy, too complicated. Too many freaking social workers with their own ideas on how to do things. They need a bed to sleep in, and they need family, and they need a job. That's what we all need. Call me. Call me when you have the other 8. I can probably find at least 2 or 3 more. Under $100 a month. Probably 1 day a month spend with that person. Not all at once, but, furnish their apartment. Help them grocery. Teach them to cook. Probably know how to cook already. They probably teach us a lot.
I just wants to play, and it gives me hope. It gives me hope and fear at the same time. It gives me hope that once people see this, share the experience, because art's all about emotions, and those actors made everyone in this room feel a variety of emotions really strongly. I think that's the key of how actually to get the bureaucracy to help, not just the street people, but to help the people who are helping the street people. It gives me fear that it's going to be an attempt to reach out with where the status quo isn't going to let anything be changed. It's still going to be the same old shit, the same old crap, same old cops beating and mean and people sitting on you, and same old shit. You've given me a lot to think about, and I just hope everyone else here thinks about it too, and tells other people. Not all of us are bad. I want a life to be proud of just as much as anyone else does.
Look at you all. So I'm calling you back now for our third act, which is our communal conversation and debrief. And I'm sure There are many moments that are still resonating. I'd keep my cat. Human beings. Before we jump into our panel conversation, however, I must thank the creative team. You have modeled for us what I hope we can all achieve at some level, which is to flex those empathetic muscles and live in the discomfort, to speak the stories, to be with the stories. You all did that marvelously. And the impact, I can feel it in myself, in my own body, and I can feel it in the room. So thank you for that. I'm calling you out by name because you have your own stories as well. So thank you to our actors, Melisa Kamibayashi, Rae-Anna Maitland, Claude Laroche, I can't see you all very clearly here, Jim Payette, and Steve Powers. Thank you to our actors. And thank you to the producers who courageously forged ahead with this complex, beautiful piece. And that is Andrea Rowe and Linda Gillies. So now we move into the portion of what I would call moving from our perhaps shock, admiration, into a space of allyship and action, and what does that look like? It starts with conversation and all of us engaging in it. So I'd like to invite up our panel of thought leaders tonight. We will begin with some questions between us, and then we will open up to all of you, and I really would love to hear from you. So prepare yourselves for that. So inviting up, and it is my absolute great pleasure to invite up Kaite Burkholder Harris. Katie. And I'll introduce them all, as is common practice in these kinds of things. And Joel Bernbaum, our playwright. You can sit wherever you'd like. And Albert Dumont. You can come up, Albert, and then... So as I mentioned, as is custom with these kinds of things, I will do the perhaps awkward for you, but really enjoyable for me thing of introducing you and praising you. So we'll start with you, Katie.
Just do a short one like you requested.
Just a short one. Yeah, I'm just an actor. It's no big deal. No, so I'm going to sit now. Relearning how to be in my body. Kaite is the current executive director of Alliance to End Homelessness Ottawa, but has previously worked on the federal level. I'm going to scrub my notes here. Oh, they're folded out on me. I know all these things. As a policy analyst with Reaching Home, which was the federal government's homelessness partnering strategy, and also as a system planner with the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. Kaite was a project manager for Away Home Ottawa in preventing and ending youth homelessness. So extensively knowledgeable both on the national stage as well as in our local context. But what I think is particularly remarkable about Kaite and what I've experienced with her is, in part due to her former work as a mental health worker, frontline work, Kaite has a strong understanding not only of the systems and the challenges that exist within the systems, but what people engaging in those systems experience on an emotional, spiritual, psychological level. And a lot of her work is born out of the empathy response to that. As I have witnessed her, she works tirelessly and collaboratively, which is difficult, and creatively. And she's sort of, this feels true to me. I don't know if it's true for you, but I feel, as I've witnessed Kaite, she enters a kind of flow state when she's talking to new stakeholders, when you're trying to motivate and encourage and engage people, you become this hovering presence of wisdom, and yeah, I'm really working it up here. But but you'll experience it, so I don't need to talk about it anymore. Okay. I have only engaged with Joel very briefly today, but I think your spirit reveals itself quite evidently in your work. Joel is an actor, director, playwright, journalist, and founding artistic director of some theater. As many performing artists doing many, many things to make a living, but doing it out of a real missional integrity, I would say. Because some of your works, Operation Big Rock, My Rabbi, Home is a Beautiful Word, as we witnessed tonight, and Being Here, the Refugee Project, all of these projects speak to a deeper purpose that I think you're seeking, and that in a way makes us kin. Joel is currently an interdisciplinary PhD student at the University of Saskatchewan, investigating the potential of theater to strengthen cities. Amen. And thank you to Judah, who has lent us his father for this time. Thank you, Judah. I'm sure he puts your storytelling abilities to the test on a nightly basis.
Every single night.
Every single night, yeah. But it's good because, again, it helps us flex those muscles, right? So thank you, Judah. Way back home in Saskatoon, yeah? Yeah. Thank you for this play, Joel. Et finalement, Albert Dumont. Albert Dumont. I wanted to ask, and I also didn't want to ask, because it's that uncomfortable space, right? That we're learning to exist in. Thank you for so compassionately correcting that. Born in traditional Algonquin territory, Kiriganzibi, not far from here. Albert Dumont, Southwind, is a poet, storyteller, speaker, and Algonquin traditional teacher. He has been walking the red road since commencing his sobriety in 1988, and that is to be celebrated. Albert has published 5 books of poetry and short stories, including With the Wind and Men of Dust, Sitting by the Rapids, and Of Trees and Their Wisdom, and 2 children's books, which I am anxious to see. And Albert has dedicated his life to promoting Indigenous spirituality and healing, and to protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples, particularly the young. And he's currently the Poet Laureate of Ottawa, enriching our city with his wisdom and guidance, and thank you for that. Much needed. So with that, yes. With that, Albert, if you would, open our time together with your work. This is the commissioned poem, The Sky The Pavement, which I'm looking forward to working with tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Albert Dumont. I'm the father of daughters and grandfather of 5 grandchildren. I'm going to be reading a poem in a few minutes, but I'd like to say who I'm dedicating it to this evening. I'm dedicating it to Jimmy. Jimmy was a man that I knew back in the 1970s. He was gentle and well-liked by everybody. He never caused any trouble for anybody, and he wouldn't hurt a fly. But one weekend he went to Montreal, and there was a car accident, and Jimmy didn't fare very well in the accident. His skull was crushed, and where his forehead, where the bone of his forehead had been, they put a metal plate. And Jimmy wasn't Jimmy anymore. He was still gentle and still easygoing, and just a really good guy. But he became epileptic, and he didn't have a sense of smell anymore, and he didn't have a sense of taste, and his personality changed. He didn't have no ambitions, and whatever money he got, he just gave it away pretty much. And he ended up living on the streets in Ottawa. And when he was 38 years old, the cops picked him up for whatever reason. I have no idea why the cops would pick him up. But he took an epileptic seizure in the jail cell, and he died in the jail cell. Just tell you something funny about Jimmy. Whenever I'd see him in Ottawa, I would take him for lunch. And one day, he'd always order a hot roast beef sandwich. And I said to him one day, I said, Jimmy, you can't taste anything. Why do you always order a hot roast beef sandwich? And he said, well, whenever I could taste, it was my favorite. And I've often thought about that because I'm known as a spiritual advisor, and I think about spirituality, and I think human beings have kind of lost their taste for what real spirituality is like. And Jimmy he never was destined to get his sense of taste back, but we could get our sense of taste of what spirituality is, again, with a little bit of effort. I'm also dedicating this poem to Jill. Jill was a girl who was sexually abused by a neighbor. So her life didn't get that when she was a child. And whenever she was a young woman, she was gang raped on a 2-story rooftop in Ottawa. And after the rapers did what they did, they threw her over the roof, and she broke her back. And she got addicted to pain pills and prescription drugs, and she lived on the street, and panhandling at King Edward and Murray Street. And she's doing good now, though. And also, I'm thinking about people that never felt they were loved or never felt that they were supported by family and by society and by clergy. And whenever a human being does not feel loved and supported, they're not going to do well. They're going to end up in jail or end up on the street. A lot of them. And I know what I'm talking about. I had severe addiction issues, and I came really close to street living myself. Just lucky. And so that's who I'm dedicating this poem to. I call it the Sky, the Pavement. It is the song of the ghost roaming city streets who beckon a hearty welcome to people whose strength of spirit has been unmercifully destroyed, because the human heart, yours, mine, the Prime Minister's, has lost so much of its humanity. Broken men and women beaten down in mind and spirit enter into a world where the sky becomes the ceiling of their dwelling, the pavement, the floor of their house. Some can no longer bear old memories, biting into the defenseless flesh of their minds, their pulverized spiritual beliefs unable to bring them peace. The constant raping of their minds by incurable trauma experienced by them in the years of their youth is a beast always by their side. The unforgiving, cruel citizenry stare coldly at the street dweller, and with hearts hard as the pavement under their feet, they whisper, "You are less than human." The sky, the ceiling of their dwelling, the pavement, the floor of their house. Some living there are on the run from the fear of a life living without the magic of drugs and alcohol. Some are mentally ill. They imagine in their troubled minds the great force of an invisible enemy waiting in the institutions of the city to rip out their hearts and stomp on their spirits. The distorted logic of a broken human being, the safety, the comradeship, the freedom, the good life, the street, the sky, the ceiling of their dwelling, the pavement, the floor of their house.
I'd like to, I don't want to move from there, frankly, if I'm honest. Okay. Let's begin our conversation, and we'll move with it as it goes. See where it leads. I'll start with a few questions that I've been sitting with, and then I'll open it up to the room. I think as a starting point, I'd love to hear from the three of you. So much of this evening is about story, is about human beings and their stories. And each of you is a human being with a story. And I would love to hear how you came to be invested in, to this degree, in housing and homelessness, and what stories or what moments or experiences brought you in to engage to the degree that you are engaging now. You can take a moment to think about that, or you can jump in. I trust the three of you to be congenial and take turns. Everybody looks to Katie.
I'm actually a bit stuck on that sentence in your poem. This is the distorted logic of a human being when you're in that space. And I grew up with a mom who's a social worker, and so I come by it honestly. But I just felt so often I left that job eventually because 98% of what people were dealing with had everything to do with the system and very little to do with the agency that they had in their life, because there wasn't a lot. And yet, when people did exercise agency, people would often judge from the outset maybe somebody's decision. And to me, I was like, that thing makes the absolute most sense in your context. It makes the most sense what that person would be doing in the moment. And to me, I was like, well, if we think about fixing people, we're on the wrong track. And so I really wanted to move to, okay, well, let's fix on the system, because that's the piece that people respond to a context. And I know certainly for myself, I've been really fortunate with the context that I've grown up in and I live in. And I often think, if I hadn't had that, it would be so easy to not be in the same spot. Like it was pure luck in a lot of ways that I was fortunate. And I often think, I think that's what's really driven me, is just recognizing that context is everything, and so much of how people are kind of guided with the context they grew up in, but then a system that provides a lot of barriers, is where I just would see people's individual decisions and being like, yep, that makes sense. That makes total sense. And that was the right choice for that person in that moment.
It reminds me of the moment in the play when the one woman says, I look back over my decisions. That moment struck me, because don't we all do that? We look at our decisions, but we have buffer, and not everybody has buffer, as Albert mentioned. How about you, Joel? How did you come to look at home and housing as something that you wanted to invest in and explore on a human level?
Thank you for the question, Leah, and thank you for your open-hearted facilitation of this evening. It's truly appreciated. Thank you, Albert, for your poem, your offering, and your dedications, and Katie for the work you are doing on a daily basis. My story, this is a bit of a full circle for me to be back on this territory because I attended Carleton University for journalism, and because I was too scared to go to theater school. And I thought, oh yeah, being a journalist, that's like performative, but you could probably get a job, right? And then I went to theater school after doing a degree in journalism, but then came back to Carleton and this territory to work with someone I respect a great deal, Professor Dave Tate at the Carleton School of Journalism, and he agreed to mentor me in a master's thesis on verbatim theater's relationship to journalism. And so I spent a year thinking about how my journalist self informs my actor self and vice versa. And while I was doing that work, I was in touch with another mentor named Michael Shimada, who's the artistic director, was and still is the artistic director of the Belfry Theatre in Victoria, who said, you know, that's so interesting what you're doing. Tell me more about it. And we would talk every few weeks and months. And he said, ever since I came to Victoria, he's from Toronto originally, ever since I came to Victoria, I've wanted to do a production about homelessness. We know that homelessness is a huge issue in Victoria. Sadly, it's a huge issue everywhere in this country, as Katie will tell us. But he said he's never found the right play, that people had pitched him plays about where there was like a journalist who went to cover the homeless and then became homeless and then saw the light, and or someone pitched him a musical, a homeless, and he's like no thank you, you know. And so we started this conversation about how perhaps verbatim theater would be a way to allow the community to speak for itself and speak for themselves. And we had this conversation over the year while I was doing my research, and we came to the conclusion that we didn't want to do it just from the voices of homeless people. Because of course, as we heard tonight, their voices and their experiences are a huge part of the issue of homelessness. But we agreed that I should interview 500 people across the city, the kids, the seniors, the housed people, the business owners, politicians, because homelessness exists in our cities because of all of us. We all own the issue. And so I began 2 years of interviewing, thanks to the Belfry Theatre's support. This play premiered at the Belfry Theatre in 2014. And every time I sat with those people, I sat with every person we heard from tonight in the play. And it changed my life. It changed my life, sitting with those people. And as I was sitting with those people, I thought, if I can give 10% of the feeling of sitting across from someone, another human being, and have these people open their hearts to me, if I can give 10% of that through actors like we saw tonight, so generously sharing their talents to the greater world, then perhaps we can move people a little bit down their own path of thinking and feeling. But your question was about my story, and my story really, it began here, and I'm so grateful and privileged, thanks to Theatre Wakefield and the Writers' Fete, to return here with this play and share it with you tonight.
So at the end of my life, I hope it is said that Albert Dumont was a good human rights activist. I believe it's normal and natural to be a human rights activist. I think it's abnormal and unnatural not to be. We should care about human beings. And I know from my own life experiences that trauma is connected to mental illness, and mental illness is connected to street living I had a bad accident over 30 years ago, and I live with chronic pain. For almost 2 years, I had over a pound of stainless steel nuts and bolts holding my spine together, and I had to wear a body brace for 18 months. I don't take any medication for it, so I know what it's like to live a life of pain, and I know that I'd rather have a sore back than a broken heart. And I think a lot of people who live on the street are people who, they've had many broken hearts. Many people have disappointed them and failed them. And they're not living on the street by choice. They just sunk into a place where there was no other doorway for them. So we, as a society, we should be ashamed of ourselves that there's so many homeless people. And I know what people say, you know, like you said in the play. Like I've been in a car with people that I know, acquaintances, and whenever a panhandler comes up to them, that's what they say to them: get a effing job. You know, as if it was that easy. You know, people are pretty heartless when it comes to the street people. And it's not right.
I'm sure that we, as a group, could sustain sitting in the shock and the anger, the confusion, the disappointment. And that would be justified, I would say. And I am almost reticent to move us beyond that, but I do, through conversation with you, I feel that there's a next level that we can achieve. And this is where I want to start to engage with you on how can, as a performing artist, how can the arts be a space where we not only sit in that shock and that anger and that disbelief, but actually catalyze some action and become allies and work towards. And so I guess my next question for again, the three of you, this intersection is so relevant to the three of you, is how do you decide what stories to tell and how to tell them in a way that both honors the individual without exploiting and leads those who engage with those stories to do something? And Joel, you mentioned just a few minutes ago, you know, there are forms that are inappropriate. Let's just say the spectrum of gray area is quite large, right? And we can all acknowledge that there are ways in which we can have this dialogue and do harm. Mm-hmm. So how do we as artists have this conversation, engage with this work without doing harm? And what does that look like? And so I put that to you first, Joel, because you've, yeah, wah, wah.
It's a nice little question, yeah.
Yeah, because you have done the deliberate work of really choosing the stories, and how did you do that?
I thank you for the question. It's very thought-provoking. How do we do no harm? So part of it is the research that I referred to about looking at what the ethics of journalism can inform art with, because art doesn't usually have any rules, right? Nor should it, right? Art is creation, art is creativity. But when we're dealing with people's stories, I think there's an accountability to those people. So part of it is simple but important things, like for every person I interviewed, I offered them to maintain a relationship, and once their interview was transcribed, I met with them and showed them the transcript. And once their interview was edited, if it was going to be used in the play, I met with them again and showed them how it was going to be edited. And so they had a chance to say every step of the way, yes, it's okay for you to use my words. And that was important to build a relationship too, to continue relationship with those people. I don't know if anyone's ever been interviewed by a traditional journalist, and not to shame traditional journalists because they're always under a time crunch, but if you've ever been interviewed, were you ever given the chance to look at your quote before it was published in the story? So there's a responsibility there in relationship. So that's one example of the research. But the other thing that comes to mind, because you're talking about how does art create a space, is a dear friend and collaborator of mine, Yvette Nolan, who this is her territory, who we're on now, who she now lives in Saskatchewan. She has taught me about Indigenous philosophies related to creation and accountability. And she always does this gesture that always sticks with me, which is, and we were talking about it this week as a group, that art is often created, especially theater, and you use the word space, Leah, when you're asking this question. Theater is often created in this pyramid structure, where the director is at the top of the pyramid and everyone else is there to honor the director's vision, right? But then Yvette does this thing where she flips it, right? And it becomes the circle, where we're all collaborating. And that's important to answer a question about ethics, because from the baby learning that I'm doing about Indigenous worldviews and ways of being, that's the value system that's important, is the sharing of responsibility for people and people's stories. And so if we start to create art like this, as opposed to like this, maybe we can not only support each other in creating the art, support each other in facilitating everyone's voice through the creation process, but hold each other accountable for doing things in a good way.
Okay, I'm finding a bridge. Just hang on a sec. So, Katie and I have had conversations about story and how to both share while also protecting and honoring the individual and not further isolating, further traumatizing and triggering. And so when it comes to sharing the hard realities, what are some ways that you've experienced, and maybe specific to the arts context, but maybe not, where you've seen that we can transcend from a place of shock and move to a place of action based on the story that we've heard? Do you have an example? I know you do. I'm like,
it's a leading question. Yeah. I mean, I'm still stuck on your answer too, but
yeah.
It's interesting because you and I talk about this a lot, and I think just generally the team I work with, we really wrestle with, how do we engage folks with lived experience, not by outing them as having lived experience, but they are there because of the skill set they bring, the gifts that they bring, and be equals at the table, and yet there is this, I would say, it's not creepy, but there's this strange dynamic happening, I would say, in the sector right now, and there's a good push to make sure that folks with lived experience are at the table, but I think we're in this stage of flux right now of not understanding how to do that without being tokenizing. And I think it's a growing pains period. I think people are learning and figuring that out better, but a lot of it's around story, and this sense that somehow this person who has had a lot of trauma, their value add is to tell that trauma, and no other person at the table is doing that. And so we've sought to sort of move the conversation towards, okay, let's talk about the system piece, and you don't have tell your personal story about what's happened exactly to you, unless you want to, but no one's expected to do that. And one person in our team actually made the point, they were like, yeah, but it's all trauma. We can talk about policy and systems all day, but it's all trauma. And that like was a gut punch, because I was like, you're completely right, and I don't know what to do with that. Like, how do we make this space safe? And one thing that I have seen, and I've seen it done really badly, and I've seen it done well, I think the one where I really struggle is when it's one way and there's no reciprocation. And tonight's been so beautiful because it's felt like a conversation, and the way that it's written, Joel, and the way that it's communicated and the actors reading, it really did feel like we were all being pulled into a living room and people were just talking normally. And I've seen where there's a wall and the audience is there and a person is up front being put on a spot and sharing a lot of their trauma, and not with, I think, a context or a safety net to be supported to do that or to take care of themselves after. And what happens is that person is more isolated, and I've chatted with folks where this has happened, and they felt more isolated at the end, and the audience feels isolated because they can't engage. They're just kind of paralyzed themselves and don't know how to actually wrestle with the complexity of what that means and what it says about who we are as communities that enable homelessness and that allow this kind of stuff. And so where I've seen it done well, and this is what we're working on, Leah, so it's a bit of a shameless plug, but is when it's immersive and when it's an actual like lived, I'm gonna embody the process to some degree of having to navigate a system. I'm gonna deal with waiting in line and getting my ID and then being brushed aside and told to go elsewhere. And we've done this with an exercise called the Poverty Challenge. I've had the opportunity to do it in a number of communities across Canada, but it was that process of starting with folks who have been homeless or were currently homeless and asking them to start pointing out the parts of the system that didn't work, and then building a script. And I loved, it was verbatim actually, and we would write the script together and then they would edit whenever I was wrong. They'd be like, get rid of that, put this here. And then they would actually, on the day of, it's basically a simulation experience. And so participants come in and they have sort of a profile and they follow this process of having to navigate the system. And I think my favorite person was in Kelowna. And this one woman, Dorothy, she was like, you know what? I'm gonna be by law. These people are gonna be waiting in the line and I'm gonna go ticket them. And so she like jumped in, and it was just this, like, it was totally organic, but just this ability to like start to immerse a tiny, tiny little bit into a context that many of us have no kind of concept of. And that's where I've seen it work, when it's not one way and then we all get stuck. But like we actually can like move uncomfortably, but we can move and try and like, okay, how do I, what did you say, empathetic muscles? Like try and use those and figure out what that means. And I think the interesting thing is it is literally moving equals mobilization, as opposed to I'm sitting and I can't do anything. And it just leaves you feeling stuck, I think, sometimes afterwards. So.
Could you repeat the question?
Well, I'm trying to think of a fresh context for you, based on the conversation we had the other day. I know that embodiment is a big piece of how you do your personal processing, and I'm thinking about the moment in the script in Joel's play when the man talks about getting 10 people together. Mm-hmm. And I guess the question I want to ask you is, this is a lot of pressure. What do you think we should do? Because I can feel you, we want to get into our bodies, we want to do something, we want to activate. And in many ways, I feel us floundering about for eldership, trying to figure out who knows what we should do. Yeah. And obviously, it depends on the individual. You talk a lot about the human being, the individual, the person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is relational, knowing the person. But as a community, what can we do?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you an experience I had, I think it was about 10 years ago. And Tantu Cardinal called me or contacted me and asked me if it was possible for me to write a short play, because she was living in Saskatoon, and she was at a kind of a street theater where the young homeless Indigenous youth were going to act out whatever play that people wrote, I guess, whoever Tantu had contacted. So I took up the challenge and I wrote a short play about a lady who's interviewing on a talk show on TV, and she's interviewing alcohol addiction personified. And alcohol addiction is kind of like a Jack Nicholson type character. And she's celebrating 10 years of sobriety, and he's telling her that eventually she's going to go back to alcohol. And he starts reminding her of some nonsense and things that she had did while she was in the grips of addiction. And he's really working on her, and she tells him, no, you're never going to, I'll never go back to alcohol. And she reaches down and has a drum and starts to sing a traditional song. And that's the end of the play. But it was for young people to perform, and for me it would make them think about their addiction and how somebody's controlling it. You know, one thing that I've discovered about life is that a lot of people will say that nobody or nothing will ever control them. They say, I'm my own man, or I'm my own woman, and I'm not going to, nobody's going to control me. And then they go to the liquor store and buy a 40-ounce of Jack Daniels, or they get stoned. They're being controlled and they don't even know it. So, and I think as a community, and I think if our community was conducted itself more like a family, well, then we'd care about the family member that was on a bad trail. And I think that's probably what's missing for us as a society. Nobody's better. No human being is better. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, Albert Dumont is not better than anybody else, and somebody makes a big mistake whenever they start signaling that they think they're better than me, because I don't tolerate it.
Before I open it up to Q&A, I just want to give Katie an opportunity to share with us some of the, maybe on the federal level, municipal level, local level, what are some things that are happening that we can plug into? I know this feels like a really jarring shift, but I'm sorry, everybody. We would just want to stay in the Zen spiritual space, but I also think that there are some practical things that we need to know about and that we can engage with, and then I'd like to open it up to all of you, and please ask questions about the play, ask questions about arts for social change, whatever is occurring to you in the moment.
So I have a lot of hope around ending homelessness for two reasons. One, it's actually happening. Communities are reducing homelessness significantly across the country. And two, I have hope in people, like people who have been homeless, who are experiencing homelessness, people who are messy and trying to figure out how to help in awkward ways, and like we're all kind of bumbling through it. But I do have a lot of hope. And I'm not going to go on a big data train, I'm sorry, and I promise I won't go there, but we are seeing communities in big cities. Edmonton is kind of the shining light in Canada on that 43% reduction in homelessness over the last 10 years, and they are bigger than Ottawa. So, and it's happening more and more in communities across the country of people actually seeing concrete reductions, and it's happening because of a commitment to coordination and working together across different resource buckets and not competing for resources, having an attitude of abundance, not scarcity, in a sector that is very much about scarcity. And so it's a shift in that direction. And I think it's also a shift in saying, what if we believed people when they told us what they needed? And so I just want to encourage you that this is not a hopeless issue at all. It's actually a very solvable issue. And in part, it's solvable because it's relatively new. It's only about 40 years old, mass homelessness in Canada. And when we like to point to the personal challenges that people experience as the reason for homelessness, I want to remind everyone that we've always been human, and humans have always had personal challenges, and we have not always had homelessness in the numbers that we see. The change is when we stop funding housing. Housing really is the core of this, because whatever personal challenge you have, if you have a safe, supportive place to be at night, that's the foundation of community, becomes the base for connection, for family, and for the things that make us human and help us thrive. So don't be disheartened, because this is something that is being solved, and please get on the train and call your MP, call your MPP, and when affordable housing is going to be built in your neighborhood, embrace it, welcome the people who are moving in, and welcome your neighbors. Thanks, Leah.
That was the flow state I was talking about. It was like, yeah. All right, so now to you. And if you need to continue your personal interior processing, that's fine, but I do welcome you to ask your questions, whether to us or to the room. And I will likely repeat it just for the sake of the live stream, so that it can be heard on the live stream as well. Yes.
Yeah, amazing all around the conversation. What you provided, the actors and how they've portrayed the stories in so many different ways and different people along the path was really quite compelling and beautifully illustrated. And what I was particularly interested in, sort of a bit following on what Kaite was just saying, is, and I don't know, for some reason I got really interested in that whole piece about what was said and how it was portrayed so beautifully by the actor about the industry that is present in the world of mental health, addiction, homelessness, and I'm a kind of two minds, because I've been, participant in that industry for a very long time as well, and I've seen some amazing shifts and some beautiful, beautiful people who have risen beyond it, beyond the space of homelessness and beyond the space of addictions, connecting with people who are really important. And so the industry has an importance, yet on the other hand, it holds the keys, right? It holds the power in a lot of things and in a lot of ways. And I'm curious as to what for you, Joel, to have to represent it, that why was it this really and really important for you to be in there?
Thank you. Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, so just for the sake of those listening in, so the question was the moment in the play when they discuss the industry of homelessness and wrestling out the paradox between the necessity to have services, but then how do we transfer the power away so that there isn't an industry that is living off of homelessness, and what was the choice behind choosing to put that in the play?
Thank you. Thank you for repeating the question, and thank you for the question.
You're so good at thanking everybody.
Gratitude is a value. Yeah.
It is.
I'd like to hear my fellow panelists' take on the industry point, because for me it was highly intuitive in terms of what I chose. I am not the writer of this piece, I'm the editor, but that is not to say there's not authorship, right? I got to choose what voices and where they were put together. For me, the general rule was when I felt something in my gut or in my heart during an interview, I knew that that should be considered for the play. And so it wasn't so much a head exercise, but a heart and gut exercise. At that moment, when I watched the Reverend, who gave that speech, who to this day, years later, continues to go out at 5 in the morning and take coffee to those street-entrenched people that he knows in his community. When I watched him say that speech, he was grappling with his very existence. You know, he says in that speech, for 30 years, I've worked in this industry, that he built his life, his car is on the backs of the poor. And yet, what is he to do? Go and make widgets, you know? Like, he's doing what his calling is. So for me, it was watching another human being grapple with the feeling of that conundrum, right? And that's why I chose to include it. But I mean, maybe you could speak to that, Katie, the industry concept, because I think you're a lot more knowledgeable in that area than me.
Well, I'm probably a lot more wrestling. And Joanne and I used to work together in the industry. I still work in the industry. And it's interesting because I had a friend who did a keynote speech at a conference, and she told me what she was going to speak about. And I asked her, I was like, are you going to name the homelessness industrial complex? Are you going to say it? Are you going to say those words? And she did, and she was quite initially concerned to do it, and she decided to go ahead with it. And I mean, I think part of dealing with it is naming it and recognizing that I'm in this industry. I do have an income that pays my home. And there are many, many well-intentioned folks, but I think the part that we have to name is the power piece, and the fact that when I am providing a service to a person and that person is receiving a service, there is a power dynamic that's happening. And I think sometimes we like to pretend that doesn't exist. And so your point about just the community and the family side of things, I think it's a space that we haven't figured out. I don't know that social services has figured out how in this professional space we can do community, because social services can never do community with people in real relationship, right? There is a boundary, there's a barrier, it's a professional context. And I think we have to be okay with recognizing that and figuring out how do we help people be in community and create that space. And I have all kinds of mixed thoughts, and they're not going to be coherent or linear in any way, but I really wrestle with these ideas of community and connection. And I mean, I think when I was a social worker, and I should probably not admit this in front of Joanne, but my favorite activity, I would go to the pet store with some of the people I was working with, because they'd had a really rough day, and that was the thing they needed to do. And what people like to do when they're sad, sometimes they like to look at puppies. And I was probably terrible in not doing anything I was supposed to, but to me, I struggled with that all the time. There was this wall of I can't actually just be a normal human with you because my job says I'm doing a thing. And I'd actually just like us to, have coffee and not be on the clock and not but there's a boundary there. And I'm not saying that boundary's not necessary. It needs to be there for certain reasons, but it also, I can't be a friend, right? Then all of a sudden I'm not in a real relationship, and that person deserves a friend, and that person deserves a community. And that's the piece that I really struggle with in this homelessness industrial context. And I do think we need services, we need professional supports, people need that, absolutely. But it's predominantly focused on emergency response, so let's shift it to be about supporting people in their homes and supporting people to be in community. And just, I always felt so awkward of I can't share my life really with you, and it's that one-sidedness. It's not an even relationship, and I think everybody needs an even relationship. So I have no answers. I just constantly wrestle with that question, and I'm really glad it was in the play as well to name that. Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. It just resonates. I worked in the international development, community development field industry for many years. So, what you're saying just makes so much sense. But my question is, and I hope I'm allowed to ask the actors how this experience has affected them, because
Absolutely.
You stick around long enough, you're going to get asked a question.
Yeah. So for the live stream, the question was put to the actors. What was that experience like, really immersing yourself in these stories and bringing them to life, which I think is something that we all aspire to do on a compassionate level. Do you want to come up? Or I don't know if I can bring this down without feedback. So probably preferable if I can make space for you. And yeah, Albert can stand up and stretch. You're also welcome to, if you need to move around. Yeah. And then I think we'll probably close out after you, so just bring us home with your experience.
Thank you for that question. What was the question? Sorry. Really, I have to thank Joel for all the different people. I mean, this is the thing about verbatim theater and enacting. These are not characters. These are actual people. So it was making sure to be respectful to these individuals that we are representing. We are the conduit for their voices to be heard. And that helped us to, it was really great to have Joel there because he could provide context. He was there, he met these people. And so he could tell us what they looked like, what their character, like their personalities were like, and their situation, and even the context of the space that they were in. So, this was at a coffee shop, or this was in the van while we were driving. And so it helped us really understand in a way that you could feel these individuals and their stories, and we just really wanted to be respectful. And I hope that we brought these individuals to life for you. And yes, it's definitely been impactful.
Yeah, I think I really feel it's always an honor, I think, to share words, but then in this context, I think, like you said, it's people's hearts. It's the core of somebody, and then, and I do feel that that because of that, there's something that that all of us really, because it just, one person talks and the other people listen, but if they weren't there, it wouldn't really be the same thing. So when we're up there talking, we're feeling the audience too. So that's a meeting place, and those stories are in that meeting place, and that kind of transfer is kind of magical, and I think that's why I love theater, but a lot of it, I love theater. Anyway, but I think that's that's what I really came away with, was the hearts of these stories, and how that's connected to me and my own experience, and how important it is for me to see that when I see someone come to my window and ask for something from me, and for me to not write a story for that person and create distance, like you're talking about, creating that wall, which is so much easier to do. And so, I feel like there's that transformation that I need to go on now, and I'm grateful for that, and scared and grateful. Yeah. Thank you.
I know you want to wrap up because it's been a long evening, but there's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently, because of a project I recently did about refugees, and a project I did about Indigenous relations and non-Indigenous relations, and I keep thinking about it because of what's going on in Afghanistan and what went on in Syria, and it's just something for us to grapple with, because I'm starting to grapple with it. Is like, why do we have no or little problem being like, yes, I will help that refugee, but I won't help that person in my community? Because we didn't cause Syria, right? We didn't cause Afghanistan, but we have a role to play in that person in our community. And so you talked about calls to action. I think we need to grapple with that. what are we responsible for and what's preventing us from helping the person right in front of us, like we help the person from another country.
So I think we will, I'll let you go reluctantly. Thank you for sharing your experience. I will, just for the sake of we're just gonna crawl. The beautiful. Oh, there's one more question. I can't see you because of the light, Peter. But are we? How are we doing for time? Peter, how are we doing for time? Oh, you're not looking at me. 5 more minutes. One more question. Okay. One more question.
So what I, came away with was when what some people normally say to somebody who has no home and says, get a job. It's just made me think about why do we have to couple the right to actually exist in the society and live and breathe with exchanging labor. And it just made me think about the idea of the universal basic income. What are your thoughts on that? And would this make us more, starting off on a more equal footing and maybe, growing empathy towards other people?
So the question is, in thinking about people's often, I think, knee-jerk response to someone who may be experiencing homelessness is get a job. Why does our society exist in this kind of transactional space? And is there a way on a systems level to engage with that? And is basic income a potential solution? And maybe, can I tag on to your question? Maybe there is a more spiritual, communal solution. Can we move beyond the transactional and see human beings outside of that framework? But still thinking, are there some tangible ways that we can engage with that?
The first thing that popped into my mind was that quote. I think it's, show me your budget and I'll show you your values. And yeah, people deserve a basic level of dignity, and we've very successfully managed to commodify a human right with housing, right? That is people's retirement, which is also scary on the wealthier side of things, that people's entire security is tied up in a home. And that becomes this, it's very transactional. It's becoming people's literal net worth. And so yes, from a policy perspective, definitely need to increase both minimum wages and make things a living wage and have people have a level of dignity. The CERB was a good, I think, example of that. But I do think ultimately, we elect governments. I don't really blame the government for too much, because we're the ones who tell them what's important. And if we say that it is important that people have dignity and can live well and can live with dignity, working or not working, simply because they're valuable, because of being people, then I think that goes a long way when people know they won't get voted in if they don't agree with that. So.
Lovely. All right. I think we'll leave it at that, unless there's anything else that any of you would like to say.
I know a lot of homeless people, and they need to heal from their wounds before they'd be fit for a job site, and society needs to help them recover, and then they'll be able to work somewhere, I think.
So how do we learn to see the human before we see what they do, see them as they are? With that, we have one more thing to share with you this evening, but I'd like to let the three of you move out of the spotlight if that's what you need to do, or even just to move your bodies and take a deep breath. But thank you, really thank you for your leadership, all three of you. Thank you. Okay. It's been a long time since I've used one of these things. Actually, the last time was here with my jazz band. So the final moment of this evening, I'm going to share with you, and again, a series of great privileges, the lyrics from the song that Lynn Miles wrote, commissioned for this event. Lynn Miles is a friend, and it's really lovely to share these words with you, and I think it's fitting that we end with another story, and a story of someone who lives nearby, someone that she sat and spoke with. The song was released last night, so I wasn't clever enough to learn the melody for it. However, my husband has agreed to come up and strum on the guitar that actually formerly belonged to Lynn Miles. So we're kind of conjuring her spirit in the room. And Lynn, please don't pursue me for copyright infringement on this. But consider it the first official cover of your new song. So I'm just going to speak it, and I think that will resonate deeply enough. It's called Sleeping Rough. I never dreamed in a million years my life could get so tough. My name is Kevin Willard, and tonight I'm sleeping rough. I did okay in high school, married kind of young, loved my pretty wife and my beautiful son. We were saving the down payment for a house on a cul-de-sac. Life was going good now. It's all a dream looking back. I was working on construction. That's where it all went down. A steel pipe hit my head and I crumbled to the ground. I woke up in the hospital with a steady driving pain, a ringing in my ears and a pounding in my brain. I took the pills they gave me to take the pain away. That was 7 years ago, and I was up to 25 a day. Out of work and angry, wife took the boy and left town. Wish we'd had a safety net when it all came crashing down. Surfed couches for a while, but my friend said that I'd changed, so I closed that door. There was no point in trying to explain. My first night on the street, a couple guys stole my ID, my boots, my cash, my phone, my hope, and almost all my dignity. Most folks just ignore me. They all walk right by. Some put money in the cup, but they don't look me in the eye. They don't think their comfy world can turn to darkness on a dime, but I know bad luck and lightning can strike anywhere, anytime. Now, I'm living under the overpass. It's turning cold today. But it's better than the shelter, and that's all I'm gonna say. If I had a quiet room, I could rest my broken mind. In this world with all its riches, poverty's the biggest crime. I never dreamed in a million years my life could get so tough. My name is Kevin Willard, and tonight I'm sleeping rough. Thank you for staying. Thank you for your full presence. Be well, sleep well, and we'll continue the conversation down the line. Good night.
Poetry Duo is composed of cellist Fanny Marks and actor and poet Julie Legal. These two short pieces are improvised, both poetry and cello, for the occasion of the 2021 Wakefield Writers' Festival.